Good afternoon, everyone. Now we have a next session on Rocky Linux by Mr. Gregory Kurtzer. He's the founder and creator of Rocky Linux. So let's welcome him. Over to you, sir.
All right. So thank you very much for inviting me to speak to everybody here. It's a great pleasure. I can start off by giving a quick introduction. As was just mentioned, my name is Greg. I'm the founder of Rocky Linux. I'm also the founder, or one of the founders of CentOS Linux. And I can start there. So CentOS was originally created as a build of Chaos Linux. And Chaos Linux was really an endeavor to create an RPM-based community-maintained version of Linux. Before Chaos Linux existed, there was predominantly all the RPM distributions of Linux that existed were all commercially run and all commercially driven. So my goal here was to create something that was really focusing on community, focusing on giving individuals and organizations the opportunity to collaboratively create a Linux distribution. What basically happened was Red Hat changed their business model. And they used to have something called Red Hat Linux, and that was freely available. They end-of-lifed Red Hat Linux in favor of another operating system that they just created fairly recently at that point called Red Hat Enterprise Linux, which is the pervasive and most prevalent version of Red Hat that we see today. But basically, this started off as, they switched their business model. They end-of-lifed everything they were giving away for free, and it left a lot of people without having a operating system that they were leveraging and using. And that was really what created CentOS. It was quite a while ago. The project was founded and first released 17 years ago, just over 17 years ago. And the project went, it was always a very small team of people running CentOS. It actually, the reason for this actually had to do with how do we manage the security and integrity of that operating system, and how do we keep everything in a way that's highly trusted. At the time, there was not CI/CD, there wasn't other build tools that we could use. So most of the developers were building on their own systems. So the way you manage security in that sort of a situation, or the way we manage security, was it was a small team. So that kind of persisted over the course of the project. And as a result, CentOS was always kind of a very small development team. We saw CentOS, kind of going up and down in terms of how fast the release cycle was, new versions, and so on and so forth. But please remember, this was always a small team, and this was a very, they were dedicated engineers doing the best that they could. So when Red Hat came along and offered these engineers jobs, Red Hat was able to acquire CentOS. And they called this initially, this was back in 2014, they called this sponsoring the CentOS project. But basically, when they hired these engineers, they basically handed over the keys of the kingdom to CentOS to Red Hat, and Red Hat took over the project. Now, Red Hat did a good job with the project, and there was been no complaints, for the most part, during the duration of Red Hat's, management of the project. They did a really, really good job. So everyone kind of considered now CentOS to be stable and have a nice long future. And I jokingly kind of say, we were out there just minding our own business. My company, my startup that I'm working on right now, is building a high performance computing platform around cloud native and cloud hybrid federated systems, and building clusters of clusters and meta orchestration and supply chain security and all that sort of stuff. So we're focused just on this. And then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, we get this announcement out of the CentOS and Red Hat team that they're shifting focus, and they're changing focus to something called CentOS Stream. And in doing that, they're end-of-lifing CentOS as we know it, and now creating something new called CentOS Stream, or reshifting their focus to CentOS Stream. Now, you can see there's a lot of negative comments here, and this is by far just a very small sample of it. As a matter of fact, I struggled to find any comments to this that were actually positive, meaning the community was very adamantly against this move. And they were against this move not because of what CentOS Stream is. Excuse me. CentOS Stream is actually a really nice initiative. It brings the development of Red Hat out from behind locked doors and puts it in CentOS Stream. So you can almost think of CentOS Stream being the development playground for for what is to become Red Hat Enterprise Linux. So it's now in front of Red Hat Enterprise Linux. Now, the creation of CentOS Stream is not what everybody was upset about. Everybody was upset about because CentOS, as we know it at this point, was always behind Red Hat. And this is really important. It's a kind of key differentiation because being behind Red Hat implied a certain amount of stability and confidence in that operating system. But now that it's in front of Red Hat, kind of means it's a little bit like a beta. As a matter of fact, that's kind of how CentOS Stream is positioned. It's a little bit more like a beta, or I've even heard some people at Red Hat call it a nightly build. Well, again, I feel as though that's a very advantageous thing to do for the community. But when most of the world is relying on CentOS to be absolutely critically stable, all of a sudden we start to see an empty need. We start to see that something very important to most people was removed. Now, this affected me, it affected my company, and it affected our customers, and it affected most of the people that you saw on the previous screen that were commenting on this in a negative way. And so I've been thinking about already recreating a new version of CentOS. Excuse me. I've been thinking of recreating a new version of CentOS at this point. So this seemed like a really good opportunity, and I've already been thinking about it. So I posted this as one of the responses to that blog post. And amazingly, there was a huge amount of response. And before I go into kind of the response of it, I'm going to talk a little bit about what a new rebuild of Red Hat would be, what a new version of CentOS would actually be, and what it would provide, and what are our goals. So the first one is compatibility. The reason why this is so important is we had to create something that still had that absolute compatibility with something that I call now the Enterprise Linux standard. And it needs to be, well, the way we described it is bug for bug compatible. We also needed this to be community. So Rocky Linux really had to be first and foremost by the community. And this is a really important piece of this, considering I created this through my company, CIQ. I funded this personally. CIQ helped quite a bit. And but then what we decided is this doesn't belong in a company. This belongs in the community. And so we created the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation to basically manage this from the community perspective. And so we put this back out into the community. And the community, by the way, took off on this. And I'll explain that and kind of share that a little bit here in just a moment. But really, this is a project by as well as for the community. We need to be open. We need to be transparent. This applies to everything that we're doing with the project decisions, as well as pragmatic things like our build system, tools, source code, infrastructure. Everything that we're doing has to be open to the community. It has to be auditable, and we have to be transparent about what it is that we're doing. And we created a community charter that specifically defines this and specifically states how we are going about this needs to be repeatable. I don't want to build this as if we are the last rebuild project that will ever exist. Kind of on the contrary. I want other people to be able to take the work that we've done and go and create a new version, go and extend this and go create more value out of what we've done. So going back to the open and transparent, we not only need to be open and transparent, we also need to be absolutely repeatable. Somebody else should be able to redo everything we've done based on the documentation we have and based on everything that we have posted publicly. And this really is to give confidence to everybody else who's going to end up leveraging this. Everybody who wishes to use this needs that absolute confidence that this operating system is going to be around for a while. But if it's not, there's other choices you can have, because our goal is to be repeatable. So that is to give confidence. Additionally, we've now seen a number of open source projects that have been pivoted or changed based on business reasons. CentOS with Red Hat and IBM is one example of this. More recently, we had an example of this with Elasticsearch. And if you go kind of back through, a few years back, you're going to see that MongoDB was probably one of the first ones, I think, that really made the news on this in terms of a company changing a business model to try to monetize or try to gain something out of open source. And there's probably about a dozen examples between MongoDB and Elasticsearch. Our goal in this is to inspire confidence that this project as an open source project is not going to be pivoted. It's not going to be changed. It's going to be absolutely stable. And one of the ways to do that is not to guarantee that there's a single company behind this. No, on the contrary. A better way to do this is to have a number of companies behind this. In matter of fact, in many cases, competitors working together to bring this capability out to the community and to maintain it. So confidence is incredibly important to us. Additionally, we want to be able to extend everything that's already out there with regards to enterprise Linux. We want to create special interest groups. We want to create additional functionality and additional ability over and above that enterprise Linux standard. So these are the goals that went into the project. And as a result of that, within just a few months, we tracked over 60 million global impressions, and we had over 15,000 people join the community. It was quite an interesting time at this point, because I think the majority of those 15,000 people messaged me directly and asked how they can help. And receiving thousands upon thousands of messages from people asking how can they help was a difficult problem to manage. As a matter of fact, we had so many people join this community so quickly and so passionately that it was very hard to keep up, and it was hard to manage. An interesting side note is with all of these people all joining this community and all joining together to create this, the management of this kind of happened almost ad hoc. And we had a number of groups that just kind of formed. And within these groups, we had some natural leaders, which just kind of naturally percolated up to the top of these groups and started managing these groups. And then pretty soon we started organizing these groups. And that was how we first organized ourselves. It was 100% a meritocracy, in the sense that we couldn't even tell anything about most of these people. Most of these people were using an IRC nick or a Slack nick, and then later a MatterMost nick. Many people never posted pictures because there was no time, because we all just jumped right into it. So we ended up with literally almost a perfect meritocracy. And that was the foundation of the leadership structure that we created out of this. So, and you can imagine with 60 million global impressions, 15,000 people all jumping on this so quickly. We also had a number of official sponsors and partners to this endeavor. AWS was one of the initial sponsors, one of the very early sponsors who jumped in and basically said, anything that we can do to help, please, let us help. And then Google, and then Azure, Naver, and you can recognize a bunch of these companies. Excuse me. And what we found is all of these companies, even competing companies, like some of the major cloud providers in the world, are now coming together to work together to solve this problem collaboratively. So this is how we're going to really get stability in the project, and how we're going to convey confidence to the world is we've got so many amazing companies and so many amazing people that are behind this project and really pushing to make this project fantastic and stable and everything we expected from CentOS and more. So it took us a little while to get the release done. But by June 21st, Rocky Linux was released GA. And in about a month, we had 250,000 downloads. And if we extrapolate out from there, we're a few months into this now. We now believe we have about 2.5 million installations. And this number just keeps growing. It just keeps going up. You can get Rocky Linux, obviously, from Rocky Linux. You can download it. But you can also get it from AWS, from Google, from Azure, from Naver, from Docker Hub, Vagrant, all these different places you can go and you can get Rocky Linux for free. And if you were to download Rocky Linux or go to rockylinux.org, you can download the installation ISO like you'd probably expect, but you can also get a script that will help you migrate from any of the enterprise Linux variants to Rocky. And this works within just a few minutes, and you can convert your system to Rocky Linux. We have a MatterMost, and this MatterMost allows you to, it's basically, if you're not familiar with MatterMost is a open source Slack alternative. We actually started off on Slack, and we got to about 10,000 members very quickly. And within that, as I said, with so many people messaging, not only me personally, but messaging everybody, the free tier of Slack caps messages at 10,000 messages. So you can imagine with 10,000 people, you quickly run out of messages and message space. And we actually got to the point that messages were being dropped out of Slack before I can even reach them. Before I can even scroll to them and get to them, they were poofing, they were going away. So we did have to move to something. And MatterMost, if you're not familiar with it, it is basically an open source Slack alternative, and it is fantastic. So if you're not familiar with MatterMost, you should definitely check it out. And if you want to test drive it, just go over to chat.rockylinux.org and you can get into our community. And there you'll see everything from general discussions, development discussions, special interest groups, and pretty much everything that all of our basic communication kind of occurs there. So we use MatterMost a lot. We also have a forum. There we go. I couldn't switch slides for a moment because wrong window was focused. We also have forums. So if you're more into forums and whatnot, definitely please, feel free to use the forums. And if you do need an additional help, this is an open source community. So we're standing up things like email lists and whatnot. But again, between the forums, between MatterMost, between email, we also have IRC access. So if you're on IRC, You can easily get access to this and get access to support. But I mentioned my company a little bit ago. Now, even though what we were doing was really focused on high performance computing and cloud native interfaces and hybrid clouds and federated compute, well, we had a lot of requests also to offer support for Rocky Linux. So we started offering support. We are now actually skewed up with a number of major hardware vendors, obviously the clouds and other things. And one of the things that I said when we were doing this is I said, if we are going to support Rocky Linux, I don't want to do it how everybody else is doing support, right? If you were to go to Red Hat, for example, and you wanted to get support for your operating system, you'd buy it by core or sockets or server. Red Hat calls them entitlements. If you have a lot of these, it gets a little difficult to manage. And I can tell you, my previous role, I was in the U.S. Department of Energy, and where we maintained very large supercomputers. This is a hard problem to solve when you have to count machines and manage entitlements. So site license is better, in my opinion, than basically supporting a single system or groups of single systems. But what's even better than a site license is supporting people. And this is really kind of the core message of what it is that we're doing and the why. Why are we doing all of this? We're doing all of this for people. We're doing all of this to help people and to support people. Of course, this is very good for organizations because organizations are usually comprised of teams of people. But we like to come back to the people. We like to make this about people. So we support the people. We support IT people. We support people in IT, people that are doing system administration, users, consultants, anybody who basically needs help with Rocky. We're here to help. We're not going to count cores. We're not going to count sockets. We're not going to count entitlements or servers. We'll just help you. So it's a big kind of change. It's a departure in how we're thinking about support. But I don't want to talk about a lot on the commercial side. But I do want to say we are here if you need anything. And again, I mentioned CIQ didn't. We may have helped found Rocky, but we don't control it. We don't own it, and we don't want to. We want the community to go into the direction that the community needs to go into. We're just here if you need help. So what's coming next? Well, obviously we have maintenance. We've released a basic operating system. And this operating system is, we're going to be supporting it to December of 2029. So we have a fair large amount of support, a big commitment there. So we're obviously going to be focusing on maintenance. While we're doing that, we're also going to be doing preparing for version 9 to come out. We're looking, it looks like Enterprise Linux 9 is probably going to be released, I believe, between Q1 and Q2. So our goal is to have Rocky Linux released very, very shortly after Enterprise Linux is released. So we have already started on that, and we're already starting to build packages and build the appropriate infrastructure such that we can manage that and we can get that release out there as soon as possible. We also have a number of community events that you're going to see popping up, number of different types of stuff, everything from brown bags to discussions and sessions. But the goal is really to focus on community and to focus on supporting the users, supporting engineers, people that want to develop for Rocky, people that want to become package managers. Our goal here is to really help and bring people up to speed and help educate people, so they can be part of this. We're also working on FIPS and other security accreditations. There's most of the Linux distributions that are out there that are certified for various security credentials. Most of these are all commercially based. We have a number of organizations as well as partners that are highly interested in doing things like FIPS, STIG, and other types of security credentials around the operating system. So you are going to see this happen. Unfortunately, a lot of these take a lot of time. So it will be a little while, but we are absolutely working on this. We're also looking to be adding additional value to upstream and to provide a lot of the patches and fixes and areas of improvement that we can add to basically just help upstream enterprise Linux. And this includes something that we've been thinking about regarding a cloud native build infrastructure. When we built Rocky Linux, we started off by basically trying to emulate the Red Hat Enterprise Linux ecosystem or build infrastructure as much as we possibly could. And to do that, we started off with the Fedora build system. And we took that Fedora build system and we built it up specifically to do Rocky. We added some additional capabilities around that. We've open sourced all of that. But what we found is it's not a really good cloud native build infrastructure. So we're actually building that and creating that now. And we're creating, and we're actually starting to optimize, and it even builds, quite a bit of new code right now around how are we going to do builds in a better, more predictable way that is in fact cloud native. And one of the cool things about going cloud native is you can make an assumption with cloud, which is there's an infinite amount of resources that you could use. It's definitely not infinite. We've hit the limit many times now, but many organizations have. But you can kind of think of it like that. So one of the things that we're doing is, one of the things that really exciting me actually is that we can take the operating system and submit it to a build system. And that build system should automatically scale up to the point where it can build all of the operating system. And basically, as long as it takes to build the slowest package. And so hopefully we should be able to scale up a very large cluster to build the operating system, have the whole operating system built very quickly, and then scale that down automatically. So we're in the process of building that as well. And of course, special interest groups. We have a number of special interest groups that are already kind of being kicked off, everything from embedded to HPC, laptops, workstations, desktops, hyperscale, government. There's a number of identified SIGs. In many of these SIGs, we're still waiting for leadership for these to basically kick off and to start organizing each one of these SIGs. But there's a number of different SIGs. And if you would like to be part of this, please do join that MatterMost, and please, come and be part of this initiative, be part of what it is that we're doing. The last thing I want to talk about, and there's not a slide for it, but I do want to talk just for a second about the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation, which is really founded kind of on some of the principles that I talked about before regarding keeping projects open source and making sure that they're going to be stable and around, such that companies can leverage these. And that's really what our focus was with the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. So what we've done is we've took Rocky Linux, which is basically the first major project in the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. But what you can see is there's a number of other projects and initiatives. Most right now are related to Rocky Linux, but all of this is going under the Rocky Enterprise Software Foundation. We're in the process of creating actually, I should say redefining, because we already have a leadership structure, but redefining that leadership structure into boards. So we're going to have a board of directors for RESF. We're going to have sub boards for different projects like Rocky Linux, and then different projects underneath Rocky Linux. And we're in the process of doing all of that right now. Again, if you wish to be part of any of this, everybody is absolutely welcome. And we do encourage people to join our MatterMost. It's probably the easiest way to become members in the community that we've created, and where we're going from there. So definitely, please feel free to join in. Again, my name is Greg. It's a pleasure to speak with everybody. If you need to reach me, the best way of doing that is to, again, join the MatterMost. I'm on LinkedIn as well, if you search for my name. And thank you very much. It was an absolute pleasure to speak with everybody. I see a question that came in on the web chat. I think I may have inadvertently already answered it. But yes, absolutely. Everybody is welcome. The question is, I'm a third-year student helping information tech. Would I be of any help? And the answer is definitely yes. Please do join in. It starts off as easy as just basically listening to the conversations, just getting a feel for who's who and what kind of questions people come with. But usually in a matter of time, just by basically paying attention and talking to other people and following along, you start to get the sense for how are things organized and how are things working. And then you start to see, similar questions start popping up. And so you gain some background in being able to answer those questions, and you can join in, for example, the development channel. And in the development channel, you'll see all the different initiatives going on regarding package building and infrastructure and whatnot. And same thing for the SIGs. There's a community channel. There's a number of different channels that you can join. And again, just join these, jump into these, start by listening, introduce yourself. And it's just a matter of time before it's going to start all kind of coming naturally and just people. It's a real easy way, just a low barrier, just to start helping and starting to be part of this.
Does Rocky Linux support legacy hardware?
That's a great question. As a matter of fact, that's one of the special interest groups that we have, is specifically to support legacy hardware. Now, the special interest groups have not made a huge amount of progress yet, because we were waiting to engage on special interest groups. We were first waiting to do that because we were hoping to get Secure Boot out before that. Our Secure Boot shim was just approved. And so we're going to see Secure Boot happening here, hopefully pretty soon as we get all of our build infrastructure set up for it. But it shouldn't take very much longer now, and we are moving forward with SIGs. Legacy is definitely one that has had a significant amount of interest. The question really comes down to, what is the best way of doing that? And the people that are leading that particular SIG, has already been thinking about that. But if this is something that somebody is interested in, absolutely, please do jump into our MatterMost and go into the legacy SIG. And, please lend a hand.
Thanks a lot. Thank you, Gregory, for your time.
Thank you. I'm going to go ahead and drop off of this now. Thank you so much. It was a lot of fun.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.